Hi everyone, welcome to Shop Talk. This is Whitney from Thrifty Whitney, and I am one of the co-hosts for our monthly conversation about selling vintage online. And this is going to be episode 12, and it's all about product photography and styling. We are so excited to be having a guest on. Jennifer from Shared Belongings is going to hop on here, as well as my co-host Nicole. And we are really going to get into all the nitty-gritty of what you need to know about taking great photos for your online vintage shop, because the photos are really what sells the product. So as soon as Nicole and Jennifer hop on here, they are going to join the live. Just a reminder, if you're watching this live here on Instagram, often Instagram will say, pop up a little window and it says, do you want to join the live? And that's for you to come on screen here. So just so you know. All right, I see Jennifer here. And I am going to, Jennifer, I'm not seeing an option to invite you on. So why don't you request to join? And if we don't see you come on, then I'll have you go out and then come back in. So Jennifer, let me know if you can request to join. Sometimes with Instagram, when we're starting the lives, it doesn't, here we go, Shared Belongings. We just, well, we will have her on for our co-host. If you guys are tuning in, please leave a comment down below and let us know where you are located.
Hey.
Hello, Jennifer.
How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited to hang out with you today.
And tomorrow.
So funny how that worked out.
I know.
All right. And I'm just waiting. I haven't seen Nicole come on yet.
Okay.
So let me send her a quick message and make sure that she's not having any issues. And guys, just some really quick things for Shop Talk in case this is your first time here. Just so you know, we will be posting this to Instagram as a reel afterwards with the full recording, and I'll also be uploading it to YouTube. YouTube is actually the best place to watch the replays because it can save your spot and it's easier to kind of go back and forth. If you want the link to my YouTube channel, you can comment YouTube down below, all one word, and then you'll get a link sent to your DMs. I'm actually going to pin that. Hold on, I'm going to close my window. It is so beautiful here, and it's so nice.
It's really nice here too. I just saw a lady walking and I was like,
I know.
Looks like a great morning to do that.
Let me see. I am just trying to see where Nicole is. Okay. I'll just send her a quick message. So Jennifer, really quick, will you just introduce us and tell us where you're at and about your shop and how long that you've been selling vintage?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jennifer. I own Shared Belongings, and I started my shop, it was around 2016. I had a friend who wanted me to go into business with her, and I just decided against it. Not for really any particular reason at the time. I just thought, well, maybe I could do my own thing because I'd kind of been interested in vintage all along. And so I opened a booth at Relics Antique Mall, which is one of the, I think it is actually the largest in Springfield, Missouri. So I'm in Springfield, Missouri. And I just kind of didn't really like the vibe there. And so I ended up moving to a different shop called Vintage Peddler, and it's more curated and just kind of had a totally different, you just felt something when you walked in it. It was just like a place that you wanted to be. And all the vendors were bringing like the best things. And I just felt really blessed to be there. But it was really hard to maintain that with a full-time job. And then during COVID, people just kind of stopped shopping. And so everything kind of transitioned to online. And that's when I opened my Etsy shop. And so I have an Etsy shop now and have had it since, I think that's, I guess, about 4 years. 2020 is kind of when the world started going haywire. So. But yeah, I sell on Etsy now, sometimes on Instagram, but mostly on Etsy, and it's gone really well. So I'm excited to talk about like photography and stuff. It's just such a passion of mine. Like I just love it, love it, love it.
Yes. So do you still have your booth, or are you only on? You're all online. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, all online.
Oh, and guys, I did forget to mention too, If you have questions throughout the live, the best place to put them, if you look, Jennifer, do you see that? Can you point to the question, the little bubble box with the question mark? Right.
Oh, it's right here.
Thank you. So if you guys put your questions in there, the Instagram saves all those and it makes it a lot easier for us to reference them and to find them. Oh, there's Nicole. So if you put them in the comment stream, we try our best. Nicole is moderating the comments and watching those come through, but it's sometimes we don't see them. So if you have any questions, just make sure that you ask them there. I'm going to get Nicole on here. Okay, Nicole, I cannot add you. I had this issue with, although I am going to add you as a moderator. I don't, oh, maybe I. So Nicole, see if you can request to join and then we can get you on. We're just doing a little, we've already done, here we go. Here she is. Fingers crossed. It always sometimes takes a minute. And make sure that you guys are following us here above.
Hey,
hello, you're here. Oh, yay.
Like would not show you as being live, and I went to your page and it's,
sorry,
I don't know.
Okay, well that's good to know, because sometimes if we have lower people, not as many people popping in, then yeah, that might be why, because Instagram is just being weird. Okay, so Nicole, Jennifer has already introduced herself and kind of talked about a bit about her background, and I've told people how to comment YouTube and where to put questions in and comments. So I think we're ready to start rolling too. So, okay, and Jennifer, where with the photography aspect, like did you have experience with photography before you started selling online?
Not really. I've just always loved taking pictures. I remember when I first moved to Springfield, we had a huge ice storm. And all I wanted to do was go out and take pictures of the ice all over everything. And I lived here with my sister at the time. And she was like, don't do it. It's not safe. The roads are awful. And I was like, I don't care. And so I had like my little like point and shoot. It was like I don't know, maybe a Canon or something. This was like even before, iPhones were popular, and I just got some of the best pictures. I just remember like being so enthralled with like looking at things in a different way, almost like just kind of whatever catches your eye, whatever you find beauty in. And so yeah, that was not really, I guess, when it started, but that's a very vivid memory I have of like wanting so badly to take photos. And then it's just kind of, get my words right. It's all kind of self-taught, really. I mean, I do a lot of like experimenting with things and, talking with experts and watching videos. And yeah, just something I've always loved. And it'll get better over time. Even if you're starting at the very basic level, you'll learn along the way what works and what doesn't. So
yeah, I mean it's really funny how the photography does play into the online space, because I started back in high school taking photos on like a film single lens reflex, so the big cameras, and took a photography course at the community college. I lived abroad, traveled quite a bit before we had kids, and I lived in Sudan for a year, and I took some in North Sudan. And like one of my after I moved back, one of my photos I submitted to like the Kansas City Star newspaper photo contest, and I got like a, I don't know, runner-up or honorable mention or something on the back page. And spent another summer in Bangladesh taking tons of photos at the orphanage I was working at, and like having to develop the film. So even just like way back then, it's like I always, it's a cross section of like when you have something you're really passionate about and then you realize how you can capture it on film, I think is really exciting. So
you've had like a wild life.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, we've traveled quite a bit. So I do feel like when the iPhone came out, it made me a more, how do I put this? It made me a more lazy photographer, because it was more instant gratification, and I didn't have to pay for developing film and stuff. But then switching over to, I mean, I did a couple weddings and I hated that. I really don't, anyway, too much stress. But the product photography is a completely different skill set. And so that has, in the styling and stuff, that's just, it's like the difference between watercolor painting and oil painting. It really, like, there's some techniques that carry over. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about is product styling, photography, and also like how to use all of those photos across all the different platforms. Because that's another important thing to remember as we're all taking pictures. It's thinking like, what photos will go on Instagram, what do well on Etsy, what do well on a website, etc. So yeah, so for someone who is, say, just starting out new, I know that we've had so many questions for new shop owners who find the photography aspect to be really overwhelming. And so what kind of advice do we all have for those who are just starting out and trying to figure out how to take good pictures?
Nicole, do you want to start?
I would say I only shoot with natural light. Like I don't have any artificial lighting that I use. So I would find like a good spot next to a window or by a window that gets great natural light without too much like shadows. I mean, I always think that natural light is like number one when it comes to, especially now. Like I have like a pop-up sale coming up. So yesterday I was like scurrying around taking pictures because it's supposed to rain until Saturday here. So I was like, okay, I got to utilize that natural light. So some people can't, like if you work full time and you get home late and like the sun is already like on its way down, or so like then you will need like artificial lighting, but natural light is my number one. And then just try, like I would say simple is good. It doesn't have to be anything crazy elaborate. And then once you find something that you like, just kind of stick with it, because then like people will start getting familiar with the type of like the setting for your photos, and then they'll be able to like know that it's yours versus someone else's.
I agree with both of those things. And I was just thinking when you said like start simple, like I'm just looking at my backdrop here and a picture, like it's a piece of beadboard that's painted white and a brown picture, and like just by itself even it's really stunning because of the contrast. So I think if you're just starting out, maybe play with contrast, also play with focus in the most basic way. And we'll talk about portrait mode on your camera, which is my absolute favorite thing in the world. But it'll bring those objects that are in the foreground into focus while blurring the background, and it just kind of, it makes a really lovely picture. So I agree, starting simple and just kind of learning the very basics in the beginning, and then you can always like get more advanced and detailed as you go.
And I think I also agree with figuring out your look and style. If you're brand new to having a shop, that is just going to be a process that you're going to be going through. I still feel like 3 years in that's a journey. But, you know, figuring out your branding and your brand identity and what your shop identity wants, what that is going to be actually huge in figuring out what kind of photos you want to take. So episode 6 is all about branding, and branding is more than just like a fancy logo. It's kind of the feel, the emotion, the experience that your customers will have interacting with your shop, and that includes photos. So if you, for example, let's say that you really have colors that are deep and saturated and moody, and you really move towards that vibe, but then your photos are really light and airy, there's going to be a disconnect between. So there are certain brands that I can think of, a couple of Instagram people, and like they have chosen to have dark moody photos, and it fits, and they can still represent their products accurately because they're using consistent colors and styles across their photography. And in the beginning, you might try like one photo shoot, you do dark and moody. The next one you do bright and colorful. The next one you do neutral. In the beginning, you're going to have to experiment a lot and figure out what works for you and what connects with your audience. But I think having the branding identity gives you a foundation of where to start from. And then, you know, even styles, like if you're wanting to project your vintage farmhouse account, but then you're doing a lot of mid-century modern pieces, that's gonna, like, it's not, there are ways to like integrate that, but you really have to kind of figure out what you want your shop to represent, because your photos are going to communicate that. And I think keeping it simple, start with your phone in the most basic, simple background. And then as your skills grow, then you will figure out what you actually need. You know, even though I have a background in SLR photography and film photography, like all these different pieces, I just bought a digital SLR camera just a few months ago. I've been shooting on my phone because it was a big expense, and I needed to get to a point where I very specifically was like, this is why I need this. This is what I want to control. I have very specific reasons. But I think when we're new, it's really easy for us to be like, oh my gosh, I have to get all the backdrops, all the props, all the fancy equipment. I got to get lights. You look at a list that's 10 items long, but then you don't actually know why you need them or how to use them. So,
or you just want them because other people have them.
Yes.
Like you think, like you just said, like I need this because so-and-so has this and she has beautiful photographs.
Oh, and if I buy this, my photos are going to look just like hers.
They're going to look just like that.
Yeah, so true. So one of the things I thought would be great to start off with is just basic photography concepts. And like you already said, natural light is king, but all natural light is not equal. So can we kind of talk into how to control lighting, what time you shoot, like directional lighting, cloudy versus sunlight? Like how do we actually manage? It's really easy to say, well, just take a picture near a window, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So how do you guys approach that with your photography?
So usually in the summer, it's much easier because I'm working during the school year. So I have all day, every day to shoot when I want to shoot. And I've discovered for me, like I shoot, this is a south facing window and we have blinds. And so I shoot here on the table that's just to the side. And the best light for me, like this particular time of year, is around 2 to 4. So if I can get my shots in during that time, the lighting just, and it depends too on the sunlight, you know, sunlight versus clouds, how much they're, you know, so you just kind of, I think it's just an experiment in figuring out what works for you. But you know, there'll be times too when I'll like open and close the blinds a little bit so I can see like, oh, does this light, you know, it's like my neighbors probably think I'm like doing SOS signals over here, but I'm like just trying to like figure out what exactly works and what doesn't work. And I think one thing that helps with natural light is if you have a really light colored background, because if you have a dark background and it's a cloudy day, then your photo may not turn out the way you want it to turn out. But if you have a white, like the walls in here are what they were when we moved in, and they're kind of like not really like it's almost like a taupey grayish greenish. It's kind of hard to describe, and I don't like it at all. And so I put up either boards to do my photographs, or if I have a very large vignette like Flea Market Saturday or something, I may just use the wall. But I found that the lighter color backdrops are really helpful in like, you know, the reflection of the light. And I also sometimes will put like a sheet out next to me, like a white sheet, to help reflect the light onto my vignette or whatever it is I'm shooting. I just think the lighter the better, especially when it's a cloudy day or a sunny day. What am I trying to say? Cloudy, because cloudy's great too, actually. You know, a lot of professional photographers love when it's cloudy because it's just that very medium blend of sunlight and cloudiness. And yeah, so that's, for me, that's what works.
Yeah.
I think if you have the natural light, you don't have to edit your photos as much. You still have to tweak a little. Well, you don't have to if you choose to. I think you have a better result if you do edit photos. But with like when it's a sunny day, you want to make sure that the sun isn't so bright that it like washes out your item, especially if it's reflective. And it doesn't have to be reflective in the sense of like a mirror. So like if you have just like white ironstone or like white porcelain, and then you have the sunlight that hits it, then you get that highlight spot. So you want to make sure that that highlight isn't too, well, that's me. I don't know. You want to make sure it's not too intense, especially when you go to edit the photo. That's like one of my big like no-nos is like you don't want that highlight to just completely cancel out that spot on the picture. So like time frame, yeah, I think like in the morning for me between like 10 and 11 is good. Otherwise from like 2 to 4. And with the south facing window, I feel like you have to be like adjacent to the window. You can't be like opposite or next to. For me, what I've noticed. But I actually do like cloudy because I have like a filter that I
Yeah,
apply to my
that's a
photos,
good way to describe
and
it.
it works so much better when it's cloudy
Yeah.
that I could
It's
like use that
almost like the
filter.
highlights are not as bad when it's cloudy.
Yeah.
Like, like look at my hand. Like, I don't know how to control that necessarily, but that's the light coming in from the window. And if I had that on a photograph, that'd be awful. Like, you wouldn't, it would just totally detract from the object that you're
With
presenting.
that, I've done it like where I needed to take pictures in a certain window of time because I had no other choice. So I take like a sheet of like packing paper, like the thinner like sheet, and I tape it up over the window so it kind of like diffuses the light a little bit.
I have a.
What is that fancy thing?
I'm really cheap, so I do.
Listen, you should really be thrifty, Whitney, because Whitney is not thrifty at all. I'm extra. But now
that looks like
sheets, thin gauze fabrics work really well. The reason I like this is here's another thing. I have in my free starter kit for online vintage sellers, I have a list of supplies that I use. They're Amazon storefront links. You can comment starter kit down below and you'll get a DM, and it's like a 6, 7, 8 page guide with tons of resources, not just photography equipment. But this is something I bought early on, and it is just a diffuser. And the reason I like it is it's on a wire frame, so I can just pop this up in my window, like it squeezes, because it's one of those that like collapses down.
Sunshade.
Exactly. I should put it in my car actually. And it came with this set. It has, oh Lord, no, it just like popped out of my hands. But it came with a set of, there's like silver and gold, which I don't use, but then also it has a black one and a white, like solid white one. But the black one is, now anytime you use black, it's going to absorb the light. So it's not going to bounce it back. So that's something to think about. Now, if you do, there's this one, I was looking through photography accounts, there's this one called Industrial Artifacts, and they use studio lighting. It's completely black background with studio lighting highlighting their item, and it's very iconic and specific. Again, just depends what vibe you're going on. The other thing that's good for reflecting light is like a foam core board. Is there another word for it? Do you guys know what I know what you're talking about. Like those, like the stiff styrofoam foam core.
Yeah.
Or poster board.
Yeah.
So, because it's stiff, so I can even prop it up on my table and use that to reflect light. But the diffuser, because my house has no south facing windows. I'm incredibly bitter about it. But my office faces west. So I really can only take pictures in the afternoon. But then if the sun goes down too much, it's really, really strong. So I pop the diffuser in there, and it's crazy. This is a fun, if you're really wanting to experiment with light and you have a photo spot, set up a vignette and start at whatever time of day and take a photo every hour. And you'll be able to see actually how the color and tone of the light changes so that you can see how different it is and kind of figure out when is the ideal time to take pictures. But yeah, controlling lighting, because it's always better to underexpose photos when you're taking them. So it's almost better on product photography to have a scene that's a little dark and then lighten it up in the editing process than to have, if photo is taken and it's overexposed and all the highlights are blown out and all the details blown out because there's too much
not a whole lot you can do about that.
You can't fix that. So that's just something to keep in mind too.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. So the other thing is the rule of thirds, or the rule of 3, which is another really basic photography concept that's really important. I should have, okay. Do you guys want me to talk a bit about that, or like how do you use the rule of thirds in your photos? I'm going to draw up.
Well, I know.
So I think of I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I feel like the rule of thirds like goes back to like art. So if anybody's taken like a high school level or higher like art class, like it should have been taught to you before, like if you were a really good teacher. But I remember like rule of thirds back in like, I think it was freshman year in high school, my teacher was like really big into it. And he's like, you want to make sure that every composition follows the rule of thirds. which is just like an aesthetically pleasing format. So like you don't want your item like dead center in the middle, unless that's your style, if that's what you're looking for. But the rule of
or you're taking like detail photos, but when we're talking about a general styling vignette, sorry.
No, it's fine. So the way I was taught is that you want to kind of get closer to like the intersections of the point.
Let me, and this,
and it just kind of helps your eye like go around the whole composition instead of just like right in the middle, and then you don't pay attention to what's going on around you.
So right here, and now there is a setting on your phones. If you're shooting with phones, you should be able to turn on the grid. I always have the grid on because then the grid shows up on your photos on your phone screen, and you can see exactly where to put these. So in a vignette, this is kind of where you would want to put your table. Or if you're going this way, right, you don't want that table to be smack dab here and then have, you know, all this space here, and it's not going to be even. Because it is like kind of a basic design concept. The other thing with the rule of thirds too is putting together groupings of 3 objects. For whatever reason, sorry, Antique House says, as a photographer, yes, not always for product photography. Yes, exactly. Like I was saying, if you are taking detail shots, like, and we'll talk about that later with the kind of photos that we're, you know, there's different kinds of photos that you're going to take as you're showing off your products. Clearly, if you're trying to take a picture of this mug, it's going to be in the middle. You're going to be taking close-up shots of everything. But when you're styling, let's say a photo for Instagram or a cover image, that kind of thing, having this is going to help you to style things. So also our eyes prefer groupings of odd numbered objects, so 3, 5, 7, etc. So when you're thinking about putting together, let's say you're pulling together items for a drop and you're wanting to style them into a vignette, having odd numbered pieces, let's say you take photos of 3 different items instead of 4, because it just feels more balanced. And then it also creates a triangle. Anytime that you're talking about composition, when you have a triangle of items, your eye is going to move more quickly. Have you guys seen this in photography? I wish I should have brought in some photos, some photo books to show.
I've also heard it described as like a waterfall effect. So like if you start, like if you look at my Instagram, a lot of my vignettes are like higher on the left, and they kind of go, it's probably backward now, higher on the left, and they go down on the right to kind of level out. And it just helps the eye travel through, you know, typically you're going to zoom in on the largest thing, but then because of the composition, you're going to kind of move all around and see everything.
Yeah. And that's true even for booths. My booth stylist that I worked with when I first started doing a booth, she was like, do not put like tables that are the same height next to each other. The shelving, everything needs to be different heights, because that way you're going to draw in the eye. And if you want to see this, just open up any book of like classical art, and you will start to see these triangulations with faces and different things. And it's just these simple things. Once you start to look for it, it will help you put together a scene effectively that makes people stop scrolling and look at the pieces. So also background and foreground. Not only are we talking 2D, right, up and down, but also depth. How do you guys create depth in your photos?
That's one of my favorite things to do, actually. I usually, when I start a vignette, if I'm doing if it's just a few objects, I may not worry if there's anything particular in the background. But I love, especially when I'm doing like sale photos, to start with a piece of art. I don't know, Whitney, you really love art, but I do the art in the background and kind of pull from that. And then as I put kind of the bigger pieces in the back and smaller pieces in the front. And I've even noticed that like when I've taken a photo, there'll be too much space in the front. I'm like, there needs to be something, you know, and it's kind of interesting when you're looking at it with your naked eye, it can be very different than when you look at it through the camera. I think that to kind of step back and look at it with your naked eye and say, oh yeah, that looks great. Or I might need to move this piece here or fill this hole there. But then when you put the camera up to it, you realize like not all those things are in the exact same place as they were when you saw them with your naked eye. And you might need to shift again, or you may need to pull pieces forward that like in reality with your naked eye would leave a huge gap behind it.
Mhm.
But you're not seeing that when you look through the camera lens and you take the photo. And that's been one thing that's been really helpful to me, is to kind of look at it from both perspectives, you know, compose it the way it is, and then look through your camera and do all the little nitpicky stuff that makes it look even better. Pull things forward, move things back, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything, Nicole?
I kind of do a very similar process as Jennifer.
Yeah.
The one thing I do struggle with, though, is like the actual depth of my surface. So I feel like, because I like to have like a wooden surface, but I want it to be like a, how do I say it? I want to think it's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of my like wooden pieces, I don't really like the finish on them, or I don't like the tone on them.
Mm-hmm.
So like I take pictures on like a larger breadboard that I purchased, but I wish like my surface was deeper, because then I feel like it does help create like or force depth when like you can't,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have enough room to kind of like nitpick or time to move everything
That's super
around.
helpful. That's a really good point. When I first started taking photos, my table was tiny. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get like everything I need in the photo, or how to create that depth like you were saying. And I would have to put like, I have a great table now, but I remember having to stack like, you know, gallon totes so I could extend, like put a piece of board down so I could extend the length of my table to get the depth that I needed. So yeah, if you have space for a large work area, it's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started out with like a dresser, and the dressers are not deep enough. It's for a lot of the pieces that I sold. So then I got sort of this, I mean, it was like a cheapo bar. It's actually the other thing too is the height of your table. I have a bar height table, so it's a bit taller, and that's actually really nice because then I'm not bending down to take pictures and stuff. And then I just have a German grain sack that I have on top of it because it's neutral. It's a light color, but it has some texture. So, and I have I have shiplap. I had my husband put shiplap up. The lines, I really struggle with the horizontal lines though. Getting though, now I do not recommend using anything with horizontal lines. The bead board, like the vertical lines seem to work well in your photos, but like this, you know, they're very hard. The perspective gets skewed, and it's just difficult to work with. So just some things, but I'm looking at Jennifer
a lot with the vertical.
You still do?
Because
yeah,
you have to, like, I don't use a tripod when I take my pictures. I just like hold my phone and I take them. And you have to be square in front of it. Well, I'm very particular with if something's a little off. So, and I think like some people maybe aren't as anal about it as I am, but like I need it to be like level. So when I'm looking at the picture, I'm like, okay. And then you go and then you move the item around, and then you have to go back in the same spot. So I think like a tripod would definitely be beneficial in that instance. But like you said, the higher surface height is a game changer because, like I said, I don't use a tripod. So like I was using like a table height, and I would have to be like squatted down every time I took my picture. I would be like squatting.
I have is
and it's like, after a while, like after like an hour or so of like shooting pictures, I'm like, okay, I need a break.
I have like a little stool that I bought. Like you would use it as a riser in a vignette or something, and that was the intent. And I'm like, oh, this sucker is pretty sturdy. So I just put it like I sit on it when I take photos because my table is not up like that. So
yeah. I'm looking at your photos, Jennifer. the one that sticks out to me is the cake one. If you guys go to Jennifer's profile, it's so simple. What I love is if you guys want to see a very simple, she has a antique cake tin, and in the background you have hung some lace, which we'll talk about props later. But if you're trying to understand more about depth, like you have, and clearly this is in portrait mode, the cake is in the very bottom left corner of the photo, like actual cake, and then the cake tin is right there. And it's just a very simple yet effective way of you're almost telling a story, because you have the cake, you have the tin. And that's something too, I think I meant to mention, and maybe I did, maybe, okay, that's actually further down about how we start, thinking about staging, but so we'll talk about that later. The other little tip that I have, actually I got from Brooke from the Junk Parlor, was like close the gap between items. If you have a vignette and, okay, let's say, we'll just use this. This is my haul from this week that I haven't even been able to put together. If you have a photo, and let's say this is in like a easel or something, and it's like this, it feels awkward. But if you just think about layers, seriously, I mean, right? No, almost no difference. But if you start thinking about layers and you close that gap between the pieces right there instantly, it just feels more pleasing.
Connected.
Yes. Instead of like this. So that's something, whenever I'm putting my vignettes together, I try to think about creating those, because this doesn't feel layered. This is just
this is two separate photos. This is one photo. Yeah.
And then I think, well, color, that's a good one. How do you guys think about, when you're pulling together vignettes, about how you put color together?
Well, I had mentioned earlier that I love to use art, and that usually is where that's kind of my jumping off point, unless I'm doing and that's mostly for Instagram, but if I'm doing product photography for Etsy, even sometimes I'll have a piece of art in the background and shoot in portrait mode. But I like to pull the colors from the art piece and kind of into whatever I'm shooting. I think it makes a really cohesive look. And even if you don't have anything to use in the background, you're working with your wall or you're working with poster board or whatever, just to kind of keep all those colors in the same palette, it makes the look more pleasing to the eye. Yeah, and I use a lot of color. For a long time, when I first started on Instagram, I was very much like farmhouse all the way, because that's what everyone was doing. And I have a very like obsessive personality and like addictive, and like I want to be trendy and I want to do other, but I also want to be my own person. And it took a long time for me to realize like pure white farmhouse is not me. Like this, I mean, I love this, but even here there's color. There's brown transfer wear, there's blue transfer wear somewhere. I put in like these little spools of color, like, I can't live without it. It makes me happy. And I don't think that, you need to do what feels right to you, because I think if you're not doing something that feels right to you, it's not authentic, and people can tell that. People can tell. They can tell. So art is one way that I use color, and then just to keep it all kind of cohesive within the same vignette. How about you, Nicole?
I think you're actually really good with pulling colors with like the florals that you use too.
Oh, thanks.
So like, or like if you have like a theme kind of going. So if you like pinks and oranges and yellows, like in a transfer piece, you might also have like a picture with florals that like pull the color.
Yeah.
And I think that's you have a really, how would you say it? That's like a strength of yours, that like you're really good with keeping everything like cohesive and like, like there's a lot of like intention that goes into it too, I think. But it doesn't seem like you're trying hard either. Like it's just like, it's very natural. So I feel like, I don't know, I really admire I really admire like the way you put things together.
Thank you. That's so sweet. I have like, honestly, I'm kind of obsessed with like fake florals. I'm like, I have 3 totes full of just random. I buy them at Hobby Lobby. I buy them at garage sales. Like, that's another great way. We'll talk about doing things on a budget, but like, if it's in good condition, buy it at a garage sale, throw it in as a prop. But that's one of the things I love is like, and that's pulling those colors. If I've got my vignette and I don't have anything that's like the repetitive color, I will like dig into these florals and like see what I can use to kind of bring that out. And it helps, I think. Thanks for the compliments.
I don't usually use color that much. So I try to do like neutrals, and then I might
Mhm.
pull in like I've been doing a lot of like aquas or like green glass, and like
Mhm.
that's where my pops of color come in. But or I'll like I like to use like dried hydrangeas like in my pictures. So if
Mhm.
I have like a blue item, I might try to pull like a blue floral to kind of tie in with that. But I'm like mostly neutral. So I
Well,
don't know how
we
much.
talked about like a little bit about how to make photos your own and like how to make your somebody know it's your photograph. Whenever I see your photographs, I know that they're yours
Mhm.
because you do use those repetitive elements like the hydrangea petals or your like the board that you photograph on. And all those things can kind of help differentiate you as a photographer and seller as well.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And then I'm just like, my problem is I'm here looking at your guys' profiles, just enjoying all the pictures. Let's see. I have it pulled up on my computer. It's like, oh my gosh, this is
That's
so fun.
sweet. Thank you.
And
Love
I
Jennifer's feed.
and I think also another thing to think about that you guys do really well is texture, bringing in
Mhm.
textures. Um, because if you, again, thinking of layers and different things, it can be amazing to have a vignette that's like all brass, because that's sort of when you have a big collection of one thing, it has big visual
Mhm.
impact. But if you're doing a mix of things, like thinking about how to bring in different textures, like whether it's fabric, wicker, glass, wood,
Mhm.
ironstone, all those things can also help your photo feel more interesting. So I always love, Nicole, how you always have like, it feels so careless. I'm so curious though, careless in a good way, like all your shells and the little flower petals, like do you just throw those on there like a fairy dust sprinkle,
No,
or do you like
she
No,
place
doesn't. I
them?
know she doesn't.
I'm really particular. It's so bad. Sometimes I spend way more time like actually setting it up. And then like, when you get like aggravated, you're just kind of like, and then I do that, and then the
They'll
hydrangeas fly
blow.
all over the place. I'm like, no, no. I should really like, you should be a fly on the wall when I take pictures because it's
That's
really
funny.
fun.
I do, especially with flat lays. Like that's the worst. Is like you'll do your flat lay and then you'll do the camera and you're like, oh my gosh, that space is not the same as this space,
Oh
and then you
yeah.
have to move it like a millimeter, and then you're at a different camera angle and you move
Mhm.
it back because it's not the same. Just back and forth and back and forth.
It's
Well,
so funny. Sometimes you go through like 6 or 7 photos before, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the same exact setup. It's just like minor tweaks
Yes.
before I find one that I'm like, okay, enough. Like this is good
Yep.
enough. If nobody's gonna notice,
Gosh,
it's just because
you're at
I'm.
6 or 7. I'm like at 60 or 70.
well, okay, but also remember one of the main stylists. So I went back through. I took a product photography and styling course, which was really helpful as I was reviewing it for this class, and I'll give a reference to that later. But one of the stylists' mantras is make it perfect and then mess it up just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
so it feels a little bit more natural, more lived in, more if you're doing a lifestyle type of photos, then actually that's fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
just let it be a little bit messed up, because then it's going to feel more relatable to people who are imagining how they want to put these pieces in their homes.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a really good suggestion. And I was just thinking there's some photos where, I'll put everything will be upright and I'll try so hard to get it perfectly
Mhm.
straight. And then I'm like, actually, that looks kind of good on a little tilt.
mm-hmm,
Or like, I'll turn a jar on its
mm-hmm,
side. And it just looks like it's not so perfect. It just
mm-hmm.
looks like kind of careless, like you said, like lived in, like
Yeah.
it's just natural versus like forced.
Yes. That's why even sometimes just throwing, like if you need texture or some foreground interest, getting like a vintage linen towel and just throwing it
Mm-hmm.
down. Like I literally just shake it out and like
Throw
throw it
it.
down and just
Yep.
leave it. Just
You know how
leave
many
it.
times I've tried to do that and I don't like it. So when I'm playing, no, it doesn't work for me.
That's fine. You can try it out. Oh man. Okay, so we've talked some about what kind of setup. So we've talked about equipment. Well, let's talk about when you're getting all of your stuff together for a photo shoot. We've talked some about props. equipment wise, you guys are shooting on phones, right? So
iPhone 11.
Oh my gosh, that's what my phone is too. I think it's an iPhone 11. It works great.
Yeah.
It really works great.
I don't have a whole lot of storage anymore, but
oh,
it's good.
Yeah, we go through, especially my small children will go through and take 100 pictures of their toes or something. Yeah. So I do have to go through and we don't need that. I love you, child, but I don't need that in my life. So like I said, I use a Canon 5D Mark III that is 8 years old, but it's sort of like the standard introductory one, and it's a fixed 50 millimeter lens. I really need to get a more wide angle lens because I'm realizing that with some of the detail shots and different things that I take and my quilt photos, that's a whole different beast. I need something a bit more wide angle, but I have been very happy with that. So
what do you think are like, why would you use that type of camera over an iPhone?
So basically I found I could not control. I need to go in and be able to control the shutter speed, the aperture, which is how much, with my lighting, specific lighting conditions, and the resolution of my photos, especially because I am posting a lot on website banners. I'm just using my photos so much. I posted some comparisons when I first got the camera, because portrait mode, if you think about it, portrait mode is basically AI. It's like they are taking several photos, your phone is taking a couple different photos and then putting it together to make it look like it has a focus on it, but it's not. And if you look, especially, so I remember the first photos I took were a set of these crane, so they were gilded, I think they were Spelter crane bookends from the 1930s by this very well-known manufacturer, the Jennings brothers. They're pretty high-end, very well-known, very collectible. And when I was taking pictures of the crane beak, the phone, it was like all blurry and had these weird distortions. And if you take a picture in portrait mode of a cup, the background will be blurred, and then this here will be super funky. Maybe it's in focus, maybe it's not, because the camera is it doesn't know how to guess. But when you're using a single lens reflex, it is physically focusing on that item. The color and the depth of field, they were just so much better. And for me, because a lot of my products are high-end quilts and certain antiques that, I'm like, okay, I really need to make sure I'm doing my best to represent what these items are. So that's actually like a great lesson. If you get to a point where you're like, I am frustrated about my lighting conditions, about not being able to control, and you know exactly what the solution would offer you, then you can move on and get your filter, get a tripod, get a better phone, get all those diffuser things, get some studio lights. Once you know what your pain point is and you know it would fix it, that's a great time to invest in equipment. So that, and again, it was different because I had a background in photography and I'd shot with a single lens reflex camera before, so I knew exactly what the cameras could do. It's a whole different learning curve if you've never shot with that type of camera before, and it would be worth investing in some sort of like photography course, because the cameras can do so much and you want to make sure that you're getting the most for your money by knowing how to use it appropriately.
That's a good point.
It's so funny. So I was opposite. So like I also took photography classes in high school. I've loved photography since I was a kid. My mom got me one of those like Fisher Price, the red and blue cameras. I think they were Fisher Price. And I was like taking pictures all through, like growing up. I took a couple of photography classes and like we did the you develop your own film, that kind of thing in the the dark room. I love that. So I had a DSLR camera, and I still have it. But then when I started taking pictures for like Instagram, I was like, oh, I'll just use my phone because it's convenient. But it is definitely, you get a better quality photo, like Whitney was saying, when you use a camera versus a phone, especially with the aperture and the shutter speed. And like you could pick your focus points, you could pick the rule of thirds or kind of a thing to, I want to focus in on this part, not the whole thing kind of a thing. Like portrait mode doesn't, you can tap on the screen and you can kind of tell it where you want it to focus. But that's a big thing that I struggle with is like the whole of the item, and then like that whole area behind it is in focus too. So like that definitely helps, and the color quality is much better. So I have a Google Pixel. Mine's I think a 4. It's old at this point, but I don't keep up with technology. So I've noticed, and I've looked on like forums and even iPhones too, is like certain turquoises don't photograph true to color, no matter what you do. And you can't, without going in like Photoshop and literally manipulating that one part of the photo to make it more blue or more green. I had to do it recently with like a barn pulley that I was selling that has a little bit of a green undertone to it. And my phone, no matter what I did to it, no matter what kind of settings I did to change the color, it still was showing blue. I'm like, it's not blue. It's like more of a turquoise color. So then I pulled out my camera and there you go. It got true to color. It was perfect. I just had it like lighten the photo a little bit. So it's just depending on how picky you want to be.
Yeah. Did you know that on your iPhone, on portrait mode, you can adjust the blurriness of the background? I don't know if a lot of people know that or not, but
yeah, that's a good point. If you guys, if you're opening your iPhone and there's a little F with a circle in the top right corner, if you tap that, that's actually a huge point. Thank you so much. You can, so then these little numbers show up, 2.4, and that, the smaller the number, I won't get into the physics of it because I'll explain it wrong. The smaller the number, the less that's in focus. So if you're like, oh my gosh, it's like completely erasing the whole outline of the item, just scoot it over to like 3.5 or 4.5, it's 5, and you can adjust. And after you take the picture on your iPhone photos, you can go in, you can adjust that blurry post shoot.
Here, let me show you. So I don't know if does this show up?
It's a little blown out, but we can.
It looks really blown out. Okay, I don't know if that's gonna work or not, but right up here where my finger is the F that Whitney's talking about. And you just tap that. Like right now when I look at this photo, the background is like completely blurry. I can tell what's in it, but I can't tell. Oh, that's better. I can tell what's in it, but it's not in focus at all. And the cup is like super focused. Well, then when I push this button down here at the bottom, down here at the bottom, I can adjust, like make it come more into focus or more out of focus even. So that's a great, something you might want to play with if you're using portrait mode.
And what you said, Nicole, about workflow, about it being easier, like that is actually huge, because if you're buying all this equipment and it's actually making it harder for you to take pictures and it's making your workflows like slower and causing barriers, don't do it. Just take pictures on your phone. Just get the pictures up. That is the most important thing. You cannot sell the items if you don't have the photos.
Well, I think it depends on like what program you use or what device you use to edit the photos to, and what you use to upload them. So like for me, it's just more convenient to take pictures on my phone because I have the Lightroom app, and that's the only thing I use to edit photos. It's already on my phone. I know there are like DSLR cameras that can, I don't know if it's Bluetooth or what it is, but it can, like, when you take the picture, it goes right to your photo on your phone, like your photo folder. I don't know what to call it. My camera is old. I mean, I bought it 2011 maybe. So I don't have that option. But if you do get a more modern one, then you might have the ability to just have it like upload directly to your phone.
Lauren, I'll send you the link to the course that I took. It's with the Old Potato Store, who's a British photographer and vintage seller and stylist. So it's self-paced, but yeah, we can we can chat more about that too. Okay, and then so we talked about equipment, light. We talked quite a bit about lighting. Do you guys ever use studio lighting? Like I saw some big lights in that reel that you had, Jennifer.
Yeah, I have some big lights that I got on Amazon, but they were one of the things that I bought that I was like, oh, her photos look great. Let me ask her what she uses. And that's what she said. And I was like, add to cart. And I do like them. They work really well. I can put a link in stories if anyone is interested. But I don't usually use them unless it's for the sole purpose of trying to eliminate shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I really like shadows. I think they can add a lot to your photograph.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's just too dark in here to get an accurate shadow. And then it's kind of it's a weird dark spot. And so I'll put the camera on it or the light on it to kind of make it a bit brighter. But I think unless you're really skilled with like accent lighting, which I do not consider myself an expert in that at all, I think it can kind of make your photos look, I don't know, not worse, but almost like you're trying to get the best photo, but you don't really know what you're doing. Like I don't know how to explain that, but like I would almost prefer to take a photo without artificial light, using the natural light, and then try to edit it, which I do all my editing on my iPhone. I don't even use any apps to do that. But I just kind of found a setting that I like, and that's usually what I go with. But I would just prefer to see something that's like maybe not as bright as I would want it to be, but it also doesn't look fake and blown out. I don't know how to explain, not explaining that very well, but do you understand what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have the same studio lights as you, and I finally had to buy them because quilt photography is a constant struggle because even though, anyway, we just have window issues. And there was one, I had been taking photos in my bedroom with only one window, and someone asked me, hey, is the quilt faded out on this side or is it just the lighting? And I was like, nope. Okay, I don't care how staged it looks. I have to have light. The most important thing is representing the item accurately. And if I
That's true too.
You have to, yeah. So I got the lights and it works. They, especially in winter, I don't really use them in summer, spring, fall, but in winter, if we have like 2 weeks worth of like gray skies and no sun, I mean, it can get pretty dark, and I literally cannot afford to not list stuff just because it's dark outside. So for me, sometimes I always tell myself done, and this is a good mantra in life at all, done is better than perfect. Anytime you're doing with your photos, like just keep telling that to yourself, done is better than perfect.
Our pastor always uses the acronym GETMO, GETMO, good enough to move on.
Good enough. Oh, I love that. Good enough to move on. Exactly. Like, no one is going to be submitting your product photography for a Pulitzer in like photojournalism. But is it going to sell the item? Yes. Can you sell it? If you sit there and you're like, well, I don't have XYZ to make it perfect. The lighting's not perfect, so I'm not going to take a picture. You're not going to sell anything. You cannot afford to do that. You have to list. So it is kind of.
And can I just interrupt for 1 second? That's an interesting point too, because my husband sees how much time I spend on photography, and he's like, "What are you doing? Take a picture of the photo, put it on Etsy, and make some money." But the thing that you have to be careful about is representing yourself. And we've talked a lot about that, is you want to make sure when you're taking photos for Etsy or for Instagram, even whatever your selling platform is, you want to make sure that you're, showing every possible angle, every defect, every way that it could look beautiful, because you don't want to misrepresent yourself, and you don't want to get into a situation where somebody's purchased an item and is coming at you because something wasn't disclosed in a photo or the description. And we could go on and on about the experiences we've had probably with that, but photography is something, the time on that, I'll never sacrifice that, because not only do I enjoy it, but I think it's really important, like you said, Whitney, to like show exactly what you're getting. Is that tornado siren?
Yeah, because it's the first Wednesday of the month. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh,
Is it really
I
loud?
thought it was
I'm
like a
off this morning.
tornado or something. It scared
No,
me.
do you guys not have this on the East Coast where you have to have you test your tornado sirens
They
once a
don't
month?
have tornadoes
We
on the
don't
East
have
Coast.
one. I mean, we have like the town siren for like
Oh,
emergencies,
sorry. Okay.
like when the fire, like if there's a fire to like alert the
Yeah.
firefighters. We have like the town siren, but ours might go off at 12:02 actually. So in 2 minutes we have the 12:02 alarm
Okay.
instead of 12 o'clock. I don't know why it's the 12:02, so I'll mute myself.
I know. I'm going to mute my phone. I'm going to ask one more question about setup. And this is about, this is actually one of my favorite things to debate about. Plain, simple photos, like minimalist photos versus styled photos. Now, this one, I'm specifically talking about product photography photos that you would put on a website or Etsy. So not like the styled, a whole bunch of pieces put together, but like, when do you think it's appropriate to do a very simple, like plain product photo versus something that's styled with lots of stuff in the picture when it's going to the same place? Does that make sense? I'm going to mute my camera for a minute.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to that, Nicole? I have some thoughts, but
I think if you do, you can have one that is like staged. So like if I'm selling, I don't know, like this item, and then I have it here, and I have like a close up of like how I stage it, like how you can display it, that's fine as long as you have that item by itself too, or like with a reduced amount of things around it.
yes.
Because I've gone through like it makes a beautiful photo when you have a whole curated like vignette in the picture. And I've seen a few shops on Etsy that do it this way, but then I don't know what item is for sale. I'm like, okay, this is great. This looks like a beautiful like open shelves in a kitchen. But like, is the tin for sale? Is the jar for sale? I feel like it's a little confusing, but I do think it also, like when you're scrolling through Etsy or eBay or anything like that, where there's multiple shops that you can shop through, I think it draws your attention. So it's a really good, like, oh, I like that photo. What is for sale? Like, what does this shop have? But I also feel like you need that item to make it easier. Then you don't have to go through to the description to like know what it is that they're selling.
I was just looking at my Etsy shop. Here's a photo of some bottles that I have in my shop. And so it was shot in portrait mode. So the bottles are highlighted, like, because they're in focus, like you can kind of get an idea that's what's for sale. But when you scroll, this is not the best example because the bottles aren't in their entirety. But when you scroll, you can see that it's just the bottles in the photograph. And so you know that that's what's for sale. And I do think that's important. Like, I do really like adding kind of the extra pieces. Like sometimes I don't like the seam in the background when the boards touch each other or the board touches the table, so I'll cover it with like a linen or something. But I think that there's, I think for an initial photo to catch people's attention, it's okay to have other things in the photograph, but you definitely need to have one photo that is like, this is what's for sale, and if you are selling online, to put a disclaimer too, because I've had some people message and say, oh, is that picture in the thing for sale? And props aren't included. They may be listed separately, but they're not included in this particular listing. So yeah, I think it just depends on your style and like what you like to do, how you like to take photographs.
I have heard on Etsy that Google image search prefers photos with a white or more neutral plain background.
Interesting.
Which is interesting if you think about your shop showing up on Google search and on offsite ads for Etsy. So I have this theory that pictures with really plain white backgrounds are more likely to pop up on offsite ads. I don't know if that's true, but I've seen chatter about that, whether you like that or not.
Like when it's just literally the picture in front of the board.
Scoop. Yeah, like they call it the scoop, where they have the white, the scoop is if you just had a white background like this. where it doesn't have that join, which I like.
I do
So,
too.
and I'll tell you, I do study a lot of high-end shops that they have literally nothing but nice studio lighting, and they sell stuff for a ton of money. So I'm just putting that out there just as like a counterpoint of we're talking about styling and how important it is, and also there's a lot of people who do very little styling for their items and they still sell them. So
Do you
just,
think that do you think that items that have like those bottles that I just showed, it has a little lace and a bowl in the background, compared to like if I had just shot the bottles, do you think that do you think that it makes the item look more expensive? Because I think one of the things I struggle with is like I kind of know what I want to ask for an item when I buy it, when I list it, but the way that you shoot an item can also convey whether it's worth the price you're asking or not. And so I wonder about that with like adding the bits and bobs or just shooting the item.
Well, I mean, I think if you really want to know, you take photos of the exact same item, one styled, and I'm serious, put it in your Etsy shop and see which sells quicker.
And see what happens.
Identical listings. I mean, that kind of experimentation sometimes is the only way you can really figure that out. Or you look at sold comps. But when you look at sold comps from different shops selling things at different price points, there's way too many other variables that go into that. So I think for your shop, it would be helpful to do that. So I do think on when you're thinking about your images competing. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad this is helpful.
Thank you.
When you think about your image in the search results competing with, and we'll talk about this more in the post shoot process, but something to remember as you're taking the pictures is that if you're using Etsy, you're going to pop up with hundreds of other shops. How do you take a photo that really makes your piece stand out? And I do think that having white space around it versus a cluttered background do make images pop out more in search results. But I also think that styled photos are really important because it gives your item a context and it gives your item a story. Because like, what story do you want to tell with your item? How do you want people to envision having this in their home?
Right.
And you can do a little bit of both. I think all of these are important, especially if we're also posting on Instagram. So just something to keep in mind, like as you're prepping for your shoot, think what exactly, yes, exactly. KK Whalen, one pic with you could pull everything away, take some simple photos, put everything back. You need to be thinking, what do I need photos for? I need photos for Instagram. I need it for my email newsletter. I need it for Etsy. I need it for Cherish. If you look on Cherish, all of those are cut out. All the search results are cut out. And someone, as a photographer, when I see a shot with simple props and styled nicely, you can tell the person took time to make it look nice, and that says something about the shop. Yeah. It also depends to who you're selling to. So this is another devil's advocate point. If you are selling primarily directly to consumers, people who are buying for themselves and for their home, the styled photos make a huge difference because then you give them story and context of how they can take that item and use it in their own home. If you're selling on a platform like Cherish, interior designers are shopping on those. That is why when you look at Cherish results, it's all cutouts. So you're going to still take a simple, really, really good photo, but then Cherish cuts the item out and puts it on a plain white background. You can even do this in Shopify. Shopify has AI now where you can even give it prompts and be like, I want my item to be on a kitchen countertop background with roses and a vase next to it. And it will create that background for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I messed around with it for fun, but Cherish, those interior designers need to just see just the item because they know exactly what they're looking for. They know the styled and they know how they're going to use it. And so the most important thing for them is that the item is represented accurately and that they can even take that cutout and pop it into, if they have an interior design software where they're designing a space for someone, and they can pop it in there and see how it's going to look with the other pieces that they've pulled together into the room. So
I think also with like having things like props around your item versus just white, a lot of people don't understand scale like at all. Or it boggles my mind like when I'm on like Facebook Marketplace or something, I'm like, oh, can you send me the measurements? And the person's like, I don't have a ruler. What do you mean you don't have a ruler?
What do you mean?
So, like, if I'm selling something and I'm like, okay, so this, right? This guy is about 2 inches wide by, say, 2 inches tall. But if someone doesn't understand, like, how big that is, when it's just there with white all the way around it, you don't know if it's tiny, you don't know if it's big, maybe they don't look at the measurements. So I feel like having some sort of context of like scale is really beneficial. Because someone might not know, like, okay, 6 inches high, like how high is that?
That's a
And I
really
always tell
good
people,
point.
like, grab a sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. At least you know the size. That's the 11 inches. Okay, well, that's the size of a sheet of paper. So, like, it's good to have some sort of a reference point.
A dollar bill is 6 inches, if you didn't know.
Don't put a dollar bill in your. I mean, if you're on eBay, I think that's okay. Soda
I'm
cans.
just saying, like, I'm not saying to show that in your photo. I'm just saying.
I've seen those. That's like.
No, or that's the Coke can, like next to, or a pen.
Listen, I was gonna do a really funny reel, and I'm remembering this just now. I just saw a Facebook post the other day, and it was for a rug, and there was somebody laying down next to the rug, and it said like 6-inch male for or 6 foot male for reference. And I was like, what does that even mean?
I mean,
It's so funny.
It's so funny what people put on there. But for scale, so I think Kristen from 40 Cottage Street does this really well. She always has these little blue ceramic birds in her photo, and they're looking at the item, which again creates foreground interest, and it creates a direction, because then she has right there you got your triangle, because you got background, item, birds are looking. Anyway, so also Amy from Meadow Road Vintage, she usually puts an apple in, because then exactly, everyone kind of knows what size an apple, and she sells a lot of farmhouse type things, so it gives scale. So it's also a prop, it's a styling prop and an apple. So simple things like that, I mean,
well, and also that's part of their branding too, if you think about it. Like,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So those are some things to think about pulling in. So basic phone settings. I think we've talked quite a bit about the phone settings, except the ratio and resolution settings. So walk us through.
So I had someone question, like, how do you know, like, the best format for story share versus, so like when you do reels, it's like the full height of the phone versus like the 5x4 photos, which is like slightly taller, versus the 1x1 photo, which is like the standard square. So for me, and I don't know, I haven't had an iPhone in probably 10 years. So I don't remember what the settings are like, but I have a Google Pixel, and right in the settings, like when you turn your camera on, there's like the little wheel. You can click on the settings, and then there's like the ratio, which is the 16:9, which is the full height of your phone, versus the 4:3, which is like the middle of your phone. So it might be, sorry, I can't show you. Maybe like that. Like, my sister has an iPhone, and every time she takes pictures and she sends me the pictures, it drives me crazy. I'm like, girl, do the whole phone. Like, where is the rest of it? And
that 9x16 is the size of your stories. And so I learned, if you take photos, I think a lot of people don't know, if you take photos in that 9:16 ratio, they'll fit perfectly in your stories.
Right. So I always have that setting on. It's like my default is like, I never change it. It's always just like the full screen of my phone, which is great for reels. It's great for stories. You don't have to worry about stretching it and then like the pixel ratio being a little weird. And
you can crop it if you need a square.
Yeah, you can always crop it later on, or you could change the settings. So like if you want to do like the 5:4 ratio photos for Instagram, say, or for like any type of product photography, you can always do the 4:3, which is very similar. I don't know if iPhones have more. I know you definitely have the 1x1. I don't have the 1x1 setting. So I think doing the full, then I can choose which items I want to share to stories, which photos I want to share to reels, because it drives me crazy when you go to reels and you watch someone's reel and there's the black band on the top and the bottom.
Same.
Like,
And you really
just stretch it.
and
It drives me nuts.
you really should. People really shouldn't be using photos in reels, but that's like a whole different. It really should be video. Instagram does not like it when you use photos in reels. But anyway, yeah, I don't know any. I don't know. I either do it. I always take it whatever the first initial setting is for. I don't mess with any of my settings on my phone when I take pictures.
I don't think I mess with any settings for photos. I usually shoot in 1x1 because they're usually for Etsy or for Instagram. But then occasionally I'll, if you're going to do a carousel with other people, they're requesting 4x5 or whatever. So yeah, I just usually shoot in square mode and haven't messed with anything else.
So, okay. And then resolution settings. Yes. Make sure that you are using as much, like the highest resolution possible. You just have to figure out on your specific phone where to go in there on cameras and on video too, if you're taking video, making sorry, the siren's going off again.
Like,
there's two
frames per second or something like, right? Something like that. There's like a setting for videos that like it captures a better quality video when the numbers higher.
You just have to tap it at the top and it does it. So yeah, sorry, I'm gonna, that's so loud. Okay, so I think we're finally ready, Jennifer, to watch you style.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I just need to reconfigure the camera. I have to move this table over a little bit.
Yes.
And
it
might take like a couple whole minutes. So
okay.
Do you want me to just
go ahead and start?
So just X out of this?
No, don't. Well, don't.
I'll just make my camera. Can you see me?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Okay.
Perfect. And one of the things I'm just looking out. One of the things I wanted to bring up, as you know, and we've kind of mentioned this a few times, is think about when you're doing your Photoshop shoot, make sure that you are taking all the photos you can for all of the platforms. And that also includes video. So if you guys are doing reels for products and for stories too, and even on Etsy, you can post videos of items. I do this all the time. I forget. I set up a vignette, I take my photos, I take it all down, and then I was like, oh, I forgot to take video. But even if you're just able to get a couple of clips together, then you have that footage. Again, you're trying to think about batch working. So you have footage for the rest of the week, for all of your preview photos, for stories, for Etsy, etc., all of that.
Okay, I'm going to turn the camera back on, but I might have to fix this.
And then
Nicole,
if you don't, and I'm
so
gonna,
that you can see the full
and I'm going to
bottom.
Mute my mic.
Okay. Is that good? Good. Can you see? Is it straight? Okay. Okay. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I think once Nicole pops out, you'll have the whole screen. She's just got the wheelie circle. I wonder if I can kick her out.
Try and make this a little bit more.
Let me see if I can remove. Okay, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm gonna mute my mic until the siren stops.
I keep thinking it's here. Okay. So let me just get a little. Okay, I might need to move this table back. Hang on one second. Tell me when it's like good. Is that better? Can you see the bottom of the table? No. Okay, let me fix it. I hope my iPad doesn't fall over in the process.
Okay, I think the siren. We're gonna have to rethink the siren if we're moving Shop Talk to the first Wednesday morning.
Okay, how does that look?
That's great. I think if you could bring it down a little bit more though, just because I can't really see the table is covered up. But that's good.
Okay, but let me figure out now how to get the iPad from falling over. Hold on. Because nope, that's not gonna work. I had a whole different setup last night and I pulled it in Audible. how can I get, okay, so the iPad right now is like facing, like if I let it go, it's going to fall on its face.
Can you
What do
put
you
something in front of it?
Yeah, I'm trying to find something that's heavy enough. Hold on.
This is, thanks for hanging with us, guys. We'll get this figured out.
We'll get it figured out. Oh, that's okay. So you can't see that, can you? Or can you?
I don't, if you have something, no, it's not in front of the camera. That is perfect.
Okay,
that
great.
Is perfect.
Let me move that over a little bit so I can see what I'm doing, and then we'll be all set.
Yep.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay. So let me just show you. This is kind of my work area. I have those hideous walls that I was talking about earlier. And then I also have the bead board, which I just painted. If you're looking for a really good white color, I would recommend Snowbound by Sherwin Williams. It's what I painted that board in, and it's a really good, like Nicole was mentioning, it's a really good, doesn't like bring out any kind of other color. It's just kind of a great pure white. And then this table that I actually got on Facebook, it's really long. It's so beautiful. It was only $80. I'm so excited about that. Then I have like all these pieces here that I use to, one thing to consider when you're creating a vignette is like the different heights of things, like we were talking about, how to get that triangle effect or the waterfall effect. And so I use all kinds of things, like this is just cut up styrofoam. I use recycled like plastic containers, anything you can put under like a piece of lace to elevate something. But if I was going to style this picture, which I really love, let me grab this piece of artwork. So this is a piece I had on my hutch. I hung it right on the front, really love it. Like the colors quite a lot too. So what I would do with this is, I currently don't have a nail hole in this beadboard, so I would just lean this up against and use it as the backdrop. Or you could put a hole in your wall and nail it. That would look really nice too. And then I just kind of like get down at eye level and see like where this picture would look good. Do I want it where it is now, which is kind of that overlap that we were talking about? See how if I put it over here, it's not really part of the painting. It's not part of the image. They don't connect. So if I put it here, there's a little bit more of a connection between the picture and the painting. And then what I like to do is just kind of see like, now I'm going to look at the height, and is there enough height between the picture, the top of the picture, and the top of the we have a picture and we have a picture. So that's confusing.
Call it a jug.
A jug. There we go. And right now I think there's plenty of space. You can still see a little bit at the top. Now if I were to add some florals, I might change my mind about that. But I also like when I'm doing, especially jugs or pitchers, I like to think about the direction of the handle. I really like the handle on the left, but to me that's just kind of what makes sense in my mind. It would definitely look okay on the right, but it's just kind of a different composition. So it's whatever you think is pleasing to your eye, but we've already got the variation in height, and we also have the variation in foreground to background. So the next one I would do is, we were talking about whether or not to do things simple or complicated as far as like adding bits and pieces. You could definitely photograph that just the way it is. You get all these little bits and bobs out of the way. You could definitely photograph that just the way it is. It would make a really pretty photograph. This area right here is what I would photograph. I would make sure I don't have any of this or any of this wall over here. So you could definitely photograph it that way. But if you wanted to add something a little bit extra, you could throw in a piece of lace. I use lace a lot when I'm doing my photography. And you just still want to kind of make it have a cohesive look. You know, you might do it like this, and when you shoot in portrait mode, you're going to want to make sure you're focused on the jug, and then it will kind of blur what's in front and behind. But you can see how it looks different when this is actually coming toward the front of the camera. It's all the way from front to back. Whereas if you were to put this here, there's really no depth there. You can't see the linen.
And it's drawing, it's going to draw your eye into the photo.
Yeah.
That line you see there, and then again, it's something you see in artwork a lot, is drawing your eye in.
Exactly. And so you could do that if you wanted to have other pieces in the photograph. I don't have anything close by, but I do have this basket, which I haven't experimented with this yet. But, you know, if you wanted to have other pieces here, you could have like, you know, you could have a plant like, well, I do have this. I use this plant a lot. If you've not been to Target to pick up one of these, like philodendrons or whatever they're called, this is a great plant for staging. You know, you could put that there and still be able to see your artwork. I mean, it's a little bit much for this scene, but you could still see your artwork. And then what you want to do is move this picture much closer then. And you could still have all of that blurry in the back. So it really just depends how much you want to add. I'm looking for anything else that I can throw in here.
I love it because it's kind of bringing in all of the concepts we're talking about layers, interest, different textures, staying in the same color zone, rule of thirds, because you kind of have, you know, if you end up having just the picture, the photo, and the plant right there, you kind of have a triangle going on.
Yeah.
So,
and if I was going to leave this plant in the photograph, I would definitely bring that painting up higher. And I would bring the picture up higher as well, the jug up higher as well, because it's almost at the same plane as the plant. So you would want to make sure to differentiate the heights of those. You know, if you wanted to add more things, you could do little bits and bobs. I like to use spools a lot. They throw in some color. If I'm lacking a color for, you know, something that I want to style, then I'll pull those. I use buttons a lot. I use old buttons and kind of put them in the front. I'm just kind of looking. You can see the reel I did last night. I have kind of all my collections under here, just things that I throw in whenever I'm wanting to add something. But I really like the simplicity of this. I think it's perfect. I would take the plant out personally. I would not use the plant, or I'd find a much smaller one. But I do really like the whole vibe of the color of the jug is in the color of the mountain scene. And then you kind of have this lace here to soften it up, and the fluidity of the lace kind of matches the fluidity of the water in the picture. I mean, those are all things that you kind of have to consider when you're putting vignettes together. If I was going to move this jug, I would want to be careful too. You know, the further in the front, I can't go much further because the table, but see, now the jug is higher than the picture, and I personally don't like that. So when you do play with foreground and background, you have to make sure that you're still paying attention to the heights of things, because it just makes a big difference. So what else can I show you?
So,
or what questions do you
guys
have?
if you have questions about specific items, about styling or photographing specific items, then please leave them, give us a comment. Sold.
Oh.
For sale.
Thank you.
Oh, that's great.
Sweet. I waited for that jug to go on sale at one of our local antique malls for like months, and I finally got some birthday money, and it still wasn't on sale. I was like, I'm gonna get it anyway. So the jug is an NFS.
Not for sale. That was a good idea. Yeah, I'm looking, like, set it up, then mess it up, use different tones and textures, use negative space. I think that's something we've talked about too, is there's always, you know, you can always do a photo that has a lot of items in it, and then, but don't forget to use some negative space, because I like how it's still open on the left, because it gives your eye a place to kind of rest and not be so busy.
And if I was going to shoot that, I would make sure to incorporate that white space on the left, because it's very busy here if it's just these things.
Someone is asking about how to take photos of items that have a glare or reflection, and this also was a question we got about shooting artwork through glass.
I'm gonna flip. Can I do the camera back around?
Yeah,
I
think we're done.
Okay, cool.
Background colors: grays, whites, or creams. wait for you to get, and Nicole, if you want to come back on too, if you could request, then I can bring you back on as well so we can wrap up our discussion. Because we also need to talk about what you do with all these pictures afterwards. As far as background colors, we did talk about that some in the beginning, but you know, having I think it depends on your branding and the kind of tone and the colors that you want. I think most of us do use like a white neutral background. It's hard with grays or darker colors. You just have to be careful what kind of tones that you're bringing into the picture. So if you have something that has a really strong yellow undertone, you're not going to like how that looks in photos. Oh, here we go. No, let me get Nicole back in. Okay, that was great. Thank you. It's like, so it's showing people too, like it doesn't have to be really complicated.
No, not at all.
Yay, there we go.
Hey.
Oh, I don't see you anymore.
What?
Oh.
What?
Who don't you see?
Nicole, do you see us?
No, your screen is black and Jennifer's gone.
Oh dear.
Okay, if you want to get out and come, I mean, I can see you just fine. That's really weird.
I can see you.
That's fine.
Okay. I'll just try not to make faces at you that you can't see. Okay, and then also if you guys can see, okay, good, you can see everyone. Also, if you have questions, put them in the question box. We've gotten a few. But first, someone asking about how do you take pictures that have a big glare or reflection, especially artwork through glass?
So sometimes it's easy to take the glass out, and that will completely eliminate the glare. However, if you're using or photographing vintage or antique artwork, a lot of times because of the way they adhere the backing, it's impossible. You know, sometimes it'll have a piece of paper glued to the back, or it has teeny tiny little nails that, you know, the wood is so brittle you can't take those out and replace them. And I've never actually tried to take the glass out of something before. Typically what I'll do is if I shoot it, I usually shoot down on it. Like I'll have the photo, just trying to see if I had an example, but I'll put the framed artwork on the table, and you can shoot it from afar. Like you can shoot it so that there's no glare on it, and then when you edit your photograph, you can rotate the image forward. Does that make sense? So it doesn't have a glare on it. So let me show you an example. If I took a picture of this book, for instance. So this is just sitting on the table in front of me, and I'm just going to take a picture of it.
Are you talking about rotating the perspective?
Yes.
Okay.
So here's the picture that I just took. You know, maybe this is artwork with glass on it. Here you probably would not have a reflection because of the camera angle. So if you go to edit and you go to the crop setting and you go to the perspective of forward and back, you can change the angle of this photograph and bring it forward as if you were looking down on it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then it wouldn't have the glare on it. Mm-hmm. I do that a lot, actually.
And Priscilla, she has a professional photography background, she says you can use black foam core on either side. So basically thinking about absorbing the light, and a dark tabletop will help too. I was thinking about using, like, that's when I pull out my light diffusers also, because the direct sunlight is obviously going to bounce right off the glass. But yeah, that's a great tip with editing as far as fixing the perspective, because I do that a lot, or I just take a picture of it angled. But it is hard to get it away from the light source and still have it bright enough.
So is she talking about, like, if I have this framed photograph here and it's laying on a table, or if it's like up against a wall, black on either side of it helps to diffuse?
Because instead of the light bouncing directly on the item, it's going to get absorbed by the black foam core. This is probably also why when you see a lot of like vintage glassware, a lot of times those are taken in black, like with black background. or dark, and it doesn't have to be black. I mean, black is probably best, but just a really dark background, because the light is going to get absorbed by that instead of bouncing around.
That's a great tip. I'm going to try that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm even now looking on vintage, on Etsy, and seeing the photos that really stand out to me are the ones with black backgrounds.
How are you looking? What did
Well,
you search?
I just typed in vintage glassware.
Okay. I want to see that.
I mean, and there's a lot that have really, really busy backgrounds that it's like all this stuff. But the ones, with the darker backgrounds do stand out a lot more. So, yeah, good tip.
Oh, yeah, that's really neat. I've never even considered that, because you just think black is like so dark, and
sometimes it just depends on the item. I despise shipping glassware, so I don't ever buy it for my shop, but this is good to know. Someone had also asked, black shirt too, if you don't want to see yourself in the image. Yes. Silver plate. I do feel like silver plate does this even as well. It's not just glassware, but silver plate gets a lot of reflections. Mm-hmm. So
I struggle with that all the time.
That's a great idea. I remember having an orange shirt on once. I was trying to shoot something that was, and I was like, whoa, not good.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. So, like, I do shoot, like, a lot of silver plate items, especially for, like, my pop-up sales. I have, like, it's just silver plate. And you want to make sure, that's why, like, sometimes the pieces with patina are, like, great to photograph, because there's no, like, reflection, or, like, it minimizes the amount of reflection. But you want to try to keep the area around you, like, pretty much clear if you can. Otherwise, like, diffusers or having, like, foam core pieces, or they even sell, what are they called? Photo boxes, I think, where, like, if you put it around, when you're shooting jewelry, you put it, like, around the piece, and then you can take it better without, like, having all the distractions around you. But I usually wear, like, I don't wear black. Well, I guess because I'm really fair. I try to wear, like, light grays or, like, beiges to kind of, like, blend in with, like, my skin tone a little bit, and then I'll, like, pull my hair back too. So, like, if there is a reflection in the piece, like, you're not really seeing all of me, it kind of, like, blurs it a little bit. And then I also, like, I most of the time take my phone case off, even though my phone case is very simple. It just has, like, a black border, and I think it's just clear. But if you are taking if you're using a phone versus a camera, and you're taking a picture of something that's reflective, you don't want, like, your cheetah print case or your tie-dye case or your hot pink flower case, like, reflecting in the image. So, like, you have to think about that too. Or I've even had, like, with really polished pieces, I've had Sean, we taped a couple pieces of packing paper together, and he's, like, draped it over the top, so, like, you didn't see, like, the top of my window and the reflection. You didn't see, like, the ceiling fan. And it kind of, like, and then I only had to deal with me and the phone in the reflection.
Yeah.
But it's like,
I'm laughing.
Challenging.
And it's funny too, there is a local auction house company. Well, it's really funny if you go on auction houses and see how they deal with mirrors, because photographing mirrors is, don't forget to clean your phone lens. Yeah, that should have been step number 1. Clean your phone lens before you take pictures. Oh my.
It'll look like you have a really pretty filter.
1980s glamour photos. But mirrors also are really interesting too, because what you can do, like, there's just no way around it, because photoshopping the surface of the mirror is, I don't know, kind of tricky. So they actually use a tripod, or actually it was hilarious, because for a while they were taking, it was like they had a black sheet. They had the camera on the tripod, and they would cover the person up with a black sheet. So then it looks like there was this black sheet ghost in the mirror. Anyway, it's just kind of funny, but yeah, it's a whole thing. And then at the end, like, at the very worst, if you're showing up in the reflection and you can't do anything about it, just think of how the people will think, whoa, this thing is polished so nice. Like it's a compliment. There's no smudges. It looks really good. Okay, do's and don'ts. Okay, we have a few more points left that we want to make sure we cover. What are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to staging and really product photography? Some of these I think we kind of talked about, but I really like what you said about showcasing the product in its entirety. Like,
yeah. So, like, what if, do I have anything that's large? Oh, I can do. So, like, if I have the picture in, like, the preview, I have it maybe like this, and I have some background area. Okay, that's fine. But then, like, when you're actually showing the item, like, you need to see both handles. Like, is this handle chipped? Like, when it's like this, you can't tell, kind of thing. Oh, and I don't know if you could see this, because my screen, I just see, I'm the whole bottom half, and I realize that I'm, like, divided now.
We can see
So you just have to make sure you see everything. Like, you don't want to cut off that little edge, because maybe there is, like, a little chip, like, over here, kind of a thing. So it's fine if you want to do, like, a vignette and have, like, the props around it and then pull it off to the side. I actually really enjoy seeing photos where things are cut off. But, like, you're selling the product. You have to keep that in mind. So, like, the person the consumer doesn't care so much about the pictures. Like, they want to actually see. They want to see, like, the stamp. They want to see if there's any chips on the bottom. They want to see if there's any imperfections on the top. So you want to make sure that you show your piece in its entirety. And then also, back to, like the farmhouse or, like, the white on white on white type thing. Yes, it is aesthetically pleasing, but, like, I like to use the breadboard as my base, and I have the white bead board as my vertical surface. But if I'm photographing something that's wooden, I'll put, like, a grain sack or something on the tabletop to make the wood pop a little, because
separate it.
The wood against the wood, or the white against the white. So if I'm doing white ironstone, I have a white surface and a white background. You don't have any contrast. So, like, with Jennifer saying to put, like, art behind it, at least it makes the item pop too. Like, you want to have some sort of contrast so that item is visible. So those would be, like, my major do's or don'ts.
Always, this is something an Instagram coach has said about Instagram, but now I'm thinking that it also really applies to photography. Always choose clear over cute with your product photography. Like, we are trying to make it cute, and we're trying to style it, etc. But if you have to make a choice, you always want to be clear about what the picture is showing. One of my pet peeves is when there's, like, 2 photos of an item, and it's like, no, I don't think we understand, because we're so used to shopping online, but people are trusting us to be their hands, their eyes, their ears, their noses when they're buying items, because they can't pick it up and look at it themselves. So if you have something, you're going to take boom, 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 boom. You make sure that you are hitting all of the surfaces. You get the back stamp, you get the back of the painting, you take pictures of everything. And one trick, this is sort of the post-shoot process, but Etsy only allows 10 photos. So I actually have these collage templates set up in Canva, so that, especially with quilts, I have to have all those photos on there. I'm not going to rely on them to message me and ask for more photos. So I will pop in, if I have more than 10 photos, then I use those collages to kind of compile them, and so that they're all in the listing. So
that's a really smart way to do it. And I love that they allow for video too, because then I just put it on my marble turntable, and this is literally exactly what you're getting.
Turntable, that is so smart. I mean, I've seen
it right here. It's so pretty. I got it. I think I got it at a garage sale for $8.
Oh my word.
And I just, put this on the table and put the item on it, and there you go.
Print it. That's great. Okay, so let's talk about what. Oh, sorry, there was some feedback there. That was weird. Do you hear that?
Yes.
Maybe I'm being too loud. I'll try to be more quiet. And is dealing with like what we do with the photos after we take the photos. And someone had asked about dealing with phone storage, and I think this is
Mhm.
also a big part of the post-shoot process. And so what does your process look like for editing and using the photos after you've taken them?
I try not to delete photos from my camera because I never know when I'm going to use them, or from my phone, I mean. But I'm literally out of storage, and it keeps saying like iCloud has not been updated in 42 days. And so I went and got more storage on iCloud, and then immediately got a message that said, you have no storage. So like, I just think I need a phone with more storage. But I keep all my photos on my phone. I try to be diligent in transferring them to a computer, but that does not always happen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're just on my phone so that they're there when I need them for whatever it is I need them for.
Okay. And as far as editing, like how much editing or filters also like, because
I try to
my
I
problem
try to
is
really not
I
do more.
sorry, I have duplicates because I put them into
Yes.
Lightroom Mobile and then save them back onto my phone, and then I have
Yeah.
duplicates of the photos.
I
So,
try to Well, I don't use any other apps to edit. I just use my phone, like the
okay.
settings on my iPhone. And really, I try to not do a whole lot more than brighten the photo a little bit. I might reduce shadows, and then I might sharpen the image a little bit, but I really try to just kind of let the image speak for itself. My camera takes pretty good photos, so that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't. I mean, you don't want to use filters. You don't want to use anything that's gonna show a product in a way that it's not.
Yeah.
Because that's with the filter, that's not what it looks like. You want to show it in its entirety and in its original state.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when I use Lightroom, and I do very similar to what Jennifer does, is I just try to enhance the photo a little bit. I don't want to alter like the coloring or the tone type thing to the pictures. But once everything has been uploaded to Lightroom, I go back to my camera roll and I delete all the original photos so that when I download from Lightroom to my camera roll, I don't have to go on every other photo because it usually saves sequentially. Then I don't have to worry about the doubling up. Some people like to keep the raw photo, which you could then just download the raw photos first and then edit them. So then you have them afterwards, just in case for whatever reason something happens during the editing process or you delete certain items. But then I'll download onto my phone. Thing is, I use my laptop I use my phone for taking pictures, for editing pictures, but then I use my laptop for distributing the content. So what I love about having a Google phone is that my Google everything is like hooked up together. So I can just go on my Gmail and then go on my photos on Gmail and download all my pictures from my phone. So then
That's nice.
I have them stored in like an originals folder. And then if I need to further crop for uploading to Etsy or to Instagram. So maybe I want it to be a square photo, but I might want that raw photo that has been edited to be in the 16:9 ratio for use in Reels or for use in story shares. Then I can edit it, but then I don't ruin the original photo, I guess you would say. You don't save over it. But I upload everything on my computer. I don't use my phone to upload anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different depending on what your preferences are.
Yeah, and I have a similar workflow. So I use Lightroom mobile app. So even if I take the pictures on my SLR camera, I've tried Lightroom on the computer, and I don't know, it's just easier for me to edit the pictures on my phone. So this is a bit of a workflow I had to figure out. But I just have like a cable that I pop the memory card from my camera, and it imports the photos onto my phone. Because again, I might be using it if I'm posting on Instagram, I'm posting from my phone. And then I do have a filter that I use that I've customized so it's a filter. It's actually called a preset in Lightroom, but it's a set of edits where it's very lightly edits the photos. And this is the beauty of if you're taking pictures in the same place at the same time of day with generally the same lighting conditions and the same types of items, you can create a preset to where, and you have to pay, it's like $50 a year to have this bulk copy edit option. But I will pull up one photo from the shoot, I'll edit it, like adjust whatever I want to adjust based on the lighting conditions. I usually increase texture so crazing shows up and different things. Make sure my white balance, is just right. And then I just copy those settings and paste it to the entire photos from the shoot. And then I'll go through and I'll like crop or straighten, do my little minor edits, but that saves a ton of time. Then I can drop them directly from Lightroom mobile app onto my computer or Google. I think I could put them straight on Google Drive because sometimes the VA will set up listings for me. And so that way she can just go into Google Drive and pull the photos for Shopify. The nice thing about having Shopify is once they're on Shopify, which is what my website host is, I can re-download those photos if I were to need them. So like I just deleted all my 2023 photos off my computer because we ran out of space because my son likes to play Minecraft. So we needed more space. But that's kind of my workflow. And then any photos that I'm going to use on Instagram, because I'm not listing things to sell directly on Instagram, but I might have like vignettes and stuff, then I will download those onto my phone. Can you apply at, then I'll just have those on my phone. Someone is asking, can you apply at import? I don't know, but I don't want to apply at, you mean when I import them into the app? I'm not sure I quite understand when I import them into Lightroom app, because Lightroom automatically imports all my photos all the time. So for phone storage too, if you're using Lightroom, you got to go through and delete the photos from Lightroom app also, in addition to the stuff on your phone. You probably could set that up. I just haven't seen that because it's pulling over all my photos automatically. I just find them and edit them. So, and I list everything via my computer because I just can't think when I'm I can't think very well when I'm on my phone to like type out listing descriptions and stuff. So most of my work is done on my laptop just because I function better that way. But yeah, for the editing part, again, I think you brought up some good tips as far as like be careful with your colors, be careful with the highlight settings, not overexposing your thing. It's just like, how can I make this picture as true to from camera? Okay, Priscilla, I think I answered your question. And like, how can I truly represent this item as much as possible? Do you have any tips as far as editing, like how much, especially for someone who's maybe new to editing photos, because you open it up and there's all of these options.
I mean, on an iPhone, I just recommend starting with the very basics, which is honestly, like I said, what I do. I adjust the brightness a little bit. I play with the sharpness a little bit, maybe reduce the shadows. There's an interesting, one of the edits that you can make is called brilliance. And sometimes if you play with that a little bit, it just kind of enhances everything. It's almost like an autocorrect, but it's not. It just kind of makes everything a little deeper, a little brighter, a little sharper. And I really like that one too. But yeah, I would just start with the basics. Don't try to do anything fancy. Don't just, take your pictures and experiment with the basics.
Okay. And someone is saying basic version of Airbrush for iPhone. There's a lot of free photo editing apps. I've also used Snapseed many years ago. I mean, there's a lot of free stuff out there. I think it's just finding one that fits with your workflow and that's easy for you to use consistently and creates the effect and look that you want. Agreed. Is the most important thing. So
there's a free version of Lightroom too. You just can't batch process. So you can like copy settings if you wanted to. If you don't want to create a preset, you could copy settings, and then when you open the next photo, you can just do paste settings. So then you don't have to manually change the setting on every single picture, but you can't like select a whole bunch of pictures and then say apply to all. But it's free, so it just takes a little bit extra time. But I started off with the free version, and I think I used it for about a year, and then I was like, you know what? I'll pay for it now.
Yeah.
It's much easier.
Well, it's one of those things, like you got comfortable with where you were and you were like, let me see what else I can do. So you kind of took your time at first, and then you were ready to move on, and that's the key.
Exactly. It's just building up your skills.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to look over our questions that we got. I think that we have covered most of these. Someone did ask about a ring light.
I don't use one.
No. It's like, no, it's fine for live sales and that kind of thing, but for product photography is not good.
I had a friend ask about
either, though, because then it like
it gives me a headache.
I had a friend ask about how to do product photography on a budget. If you guys have any suggestions for that, I had a couple that I wanted to mention. Oh yes,
because people asked me about my bougie backdrops that I really love. But...
So the first thing that came to mind is I did a reel a while back where I went to Dollar Tree and I bought foam core and contact paper at Dollar Tree, and I created my own like a wood backdrop and a marble backdrop. I use the marble one all the time. I love it. It's just really classy. So that cost, what did that cost? $2.50 to create each of those backdrops, and they work wonderfully. Also, I have this scrap piece of beadboard that I painted. You can go to like a Habitat Restore and buy a really cheap piece of wood and get a paint sample. The paint sample that I got was like $6. Or you may, if your sample piece is small enough, you could even do like craft paint. Even just somebody just said even just plain white. It's fine. I mean, it does not have to be anything fancy. But those are my two suggestions, and I use the iPhone that I have, and it works well. And also going to garage sales and flea markets, thrift stores, I think I've mentioned that, but that's where I've gotten a lot of my florals. That's where I've gotten a lot of like my little lace pieces, fabric scraps, anything that you want to use as a prop, you can almost find, cheaply somewhere. So don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money on it.
I think with the contact paper, and you have, how much of a glare or like how matte is it? Because sometimes I see some that are
a little bit shiny, but I did not have any issues with the glare. And it might have been time of the day I shot, but I don't usually run into problems.
And again, just like controlling the light, like we talked about. I've used backdrops from Blueberry Backdrops, and I really like them because it's textures that I have a hard time finding. And
lace is another good one. Like I have a piece of lace that I put on the wall.
Oh yeah, that you hung.
Oh yeah, really pretty.
That I do like my backdrops because there's other ones. It's called like Replica Service, and they're hard. They're hard boards, but these are just vinyl, and you used to love Blueberry. Yeah. So she started, I think primarily food photographers use them. So they're like waterproof and food proof, and you can wipe them down. And you can roll them up for storage. I will show you this one because you guys will love this one. This is when I'm talking about surfaces I can't find. Let me see which way it goes.
Oh, that's nice.
It's like a Georgian door. And I can hang it up, and it's very thick and heavy, and so they're like professional grade. They look really, really good. So again though, you bought one of the bougie backgrounds. I know they're so durable. And
is that a Blueberry one?
Yes.
Whitney?
She has several doors. She has a lot of doors, and they are photos of like, she lives in England, and oh god, now I can't remember her name. Hold on, I can't roll this up. And the other one, hold on, sorry, I gotta set this down. I'll put it up later. I also have one that's like pine. And then the other two, I can't. This one reads a little bit yellow for me, but there's also different sizes. So this would be like I can put on the table for texture. But she has a ton of doors, which are really, really cool. And again, if you're short on space, then that's the nice thing. Like I don't have room for all of these wooden textures.
Right.
But again, this is not necessary, but it's really fun to play around with. Here's the thing. I think as dealers, some of us are going to find like, I just want to be functional. I want to take the pictures. I don't necessarily love the process, but I know I have to do it, so I just want to do it well. You're just going to keep it simple. But if you do find that you really, really love the styling and you love the photography and you enjoy experimenting with different pictures and textiles and all of that, then something like that could be a good investment for you because you really are going to like maximize it. So
agreed.
Yeah, they're fun. And they're always on sale. Just the blueberry backdrops for sale. How to free up. I feel like we've talked about, flat lays. I don't know that that would be a great thing to touch on as far as camera angle and how to prevent shadows.
I do all my flat lays. I used to do them on the table that I just showed you, and now I do them right here on the floor where I'm sitting in front of the window. And again, it's totally dependent on the time of day and the lighting that's coming through the window. But what I often do is take another piece, or I'll hold it or finagle it, or my husband will hold it, take another piece of foam board and like hold it over so that it's reflecting back down onto the image, and it kind of eliminates that shadow a little bit. That's a really helpful tip, I think, because they can create a lot of shadow, and ideally that's not what you want for a flat lay. So how to layer a flat lay is one of the comments. I use pieces like this all the time on flat lays to bump things up. So like if I wanted to use this book in a flat lay, but I wanted to put a saucer on top of it and wanted the saucer to be much closer to the camera, I would maybe put this or a couple of these down and put the saucer on top of it. So it's creating height, but in a way that you can't see when you take the photograph. I don't know if that's what you meant exactly, but that's
a good tip.
Mind.
I like when flat lays bleed out from the image frame. I think that helps to create movement versus, I mean, again, I'm not criticizing the way anybody does anything, but like if you were to just put like 10 items down, say, and you do it like a grid and you take the picture, it's clear. You can see the items, but I feel like if you want to elevate the flat lay a little bit, add some different types of backgrounds, or if you are like using like a book, like Jennifer said, you can use that to anchor to create some interest, and then also to help create height and movement around it. I don't have the one-to-one setting, so it's hard for me to create a flat lay. I usually have to take a lot of pictures and then go into editing and cropping to see how it works. But I honestly, I just put it on that one like cutting board that I have, and then I can move that board wherever I need to. And then I have a little step stool that I like step on, and I try to make the camera as parallel to the surface as I can to help like not skew anything a certain way. Otherwise, you can go into your settings and like you can alter the distortion and things like that if you really want to. But I think just like trying to be parallel above and look down helps to create like a really good composition. And then with the shadows, you can play with the shadow settings. Like when you edit it, you can pull them back a little bit, or you can put a board on the side if it's too harsh.
I think too what you said about picking up your board and moving it, like I did a whole photo shoot in the bathroom one time because the lighting was so good. It was right next to my bathtub. I just cleaned off the counter and put my backdrops up, and the light was like, we have one of those like hideous like bubble glass windows in our bathroom, and the light was like perfectly filtered, and it was so lovely. So if you have the ability to like move around and find where you have the best light, then that can help too.
And I think, sorry, now I'm looking at all flat play photos. Don't be what you were saying about using lines and things to draw the eye into the picture. Having space around the flat lay is like, I don't know why it just does it's jarring. And a lot of people will create linear flat, like all their items are kind of lined up. If you just angle that camera so things are going at a diagonal, it immediately creates movement and like visual interest. And so, and it draws people into the picture. It's like one of those simple things I like play around. Oh, that's what I was going to say. On your iPhone, you can turn on a setting where there's a cross so that when your phone is parallel to the floor, there's a little cross. There's like a yellow cross and a white cross. And when it's perfectly parallel to that surface, those crosses align, and that'll tell you that you are at the perfect angle to do a flat lay photo. Does that make sense? You didn't know this? Yeah.
No.
I don't know what it's called. I don't know how to turn it on. I don't know, but yeah.
I'm gonna have to Google that.
And it's only when your phone, it won't work if your phone is upright like normal.
Okay.
But when your phone is,
but if you're shooting a flat lay and it's like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. It's huge. So I do that a lot. And yeah, it's just play around with the grids and with lines. And I do think it helps to have an anchor piece. Like,
here, let me show you this one.
Yeah.
So I just pulled this one up from my feed. This is one of my favorites I ever did. But like that painting or the photograph, this is Sarah and her chickens. I use that as my anchor piece. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see when I turn it straight, but well, the lighting's a little better now. But I kept it perfectly square to the photograph.
Yeah.
And then I used all these other pieces to like get some movement in there. You can.
And the spoons, look at how the spoons are almost out of the photo and they're pointing. Those kind of lines, if you can create that, pointing in is going to draw the eye in, and it's going to make it much more interesting than just a plain everything squared up. And I like how you used foliage and greenery to fill in the gaps, because that's also important. If you have a lot of items, get some little, dried hydrangea leaves like Nicole has, and sprinkle, just kind of fill that in a little bit, because that just makes, because again, you're thinking, right, we want to have things overlapping. That's the hard part of flat lays. I love the idea of popping stuff up with the styrofoam. You want things to feel layered, and it's sometimes really hard to do that when you have different items and then they tilt and then you have shit. So anything you can do to create some layers with your flat lay makes it a lot better.
When items tilt too, like if I have a piece of linen or whatever down and I'm laying on my flat lay pieces, and then you might have a plate that doesn't sit straight because the linen is bumpy. Well, readjust your linen or stick something under that one part of your plate, not big like this, but tiny, like a piece of, I don't know, a roll of tape or something up underneath it to level it out.
Yeah. All right. I think that was really helpful. I'm glad that someone asked about that. And we talked a lot about lighting and shooting artwork, setting up a studio space, courses. So the one course, which I can put this in the show notes also, is, like I mentioned, there's not a lot, maybe you guys have recommendations, but it is hard to find product photography courses geared towards vintage and antique sellers, because we're kind of a unique bunch. But the one that I did was by the Old Potato Store, and she actually did it with a friend, with another stylist, but they style for magazines and as well as product photography and for brands. And so the course is self-paced, and it was really helpful. Like, it also has info for phone photographers and for SLR photographers. So when I got my camera, I was able to go back and see what exactly equipment, like specific settings and things that I was able to have. And they're always really responsive with questions and stuff. So that is kind of the main one. And if you go even just follow Karen's, I'll type it in here. If you just follow Karen's account too, I love her photography.
I wrote that one down to look up. The Old Potato Store, right?
Okay.
And if you guys have suggestions too, anyone that is in here, always share those with us. So,
oh my goodness, her feed is so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's kind of like dark.
Yes,
moody.
It's really.
Love it.
And it's a difference. There's a difference too when people are coming into this as interior stylists and interior designers. I just feel like the stuff they have to share is so helpful. So if you're looking at the flat lays, she just talks a lot about, using greenery and that kind of thing.
Awesome.
So textures, I think I get a lot of inspiration from Instagram of following not just antique accounts, but like stylist type accounts, so I can see how they're using pieces in interior design. So All right, any last minute questions before we sign off? Just a reminder that we do have our YouTube channel. This will go up on YouTube here pretty shortly. And so you can comment YouTube down below and you'll get a link in your DMs to see that. And Jennifer, I'm just so thankful that you spent your day with us, your morning with us.
I mean, the 2 hours flew by.
It does. It does.
It's so fun when you're just like, you're chatting with friends and you both love what you're all love what you're talking about. And it's just like, I took notes while we were doing this, like of some things that I'm going to do and that are, really helpful suggestions. And I do hope it was helpful to those of you who are watching. And gosh, I recommend just listening to all the shop talks because I think they're fantastic. I like to listen to them on my walks, and I've learned a lot. The most recent one was the selling with integrity one, right?
With Kim.
That was a really, really
last
good one.
month. I know.
I enjoyed that one.
I want to figure out how to convert them to podcasts because I think we do have some that are very visually based, like this one, but I know that there are people who have been listening to them, and it would be helpful to have just the audio file, but you wish it were bi-monthly. Oh, thanks, Christy. I know. There would have to be, all my children would have to be in school. Anyway, Nicole would need to quit her job. We would love it. Goals.
I mean, it would be fun. I would love to do it more often, but it's just, there's a lot of prep that goes into it too. So.
I think also because they're quite long, like, a couple hours, because we are trying to get all the information in there. So we hope we try to make it up with the quantity of like having really meaty episodes. And I do have, shameless plug here. So I have started a subscription on my Instagram, and it's $5 a month. And it's been, me figuring out what works for everyone. But that is like where I share a lot of my behind the scenes information about my shop. Like I shared about a private pick I did recently. That is actually an ongoing pick where I'm going into a home and negotiating with homeowners about quite a large amount of antiques that I'm hoping to buy and that I did bring home. Talking about, like, I'll post one today probably about prepping for a picking trip, posting why I opened a second booth and some of the business decisions behind that. And so my front-facing Instagram, except for Shop Talk, is mostly selling and sharing vintage and antiques, like consumer-led and driven, focused. But the Instagram subscription is one that has been really fun to that's like a behind the scenes, this is how I'm running the business. So that's something that is available if you're wanting more support throughout the month and more information. So
thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see everyone up next month. So yeah, it'll fly by. And actually, I'm going to see you tomorrow in about 24 hours.
Yes,
Jennifer.
I'm so excited. Did you know, Nicole?
I think one of you mentioned it. I think Jennifer, you said that you
We're
were going to
hanging
possibly hang out with Whitney tomorrow.
We're meeting
to go to the Tulsa area and just see what's going on. So
I'm going on a big buying trip with Maria from Monarch Landing Quilts. We're both ditching our kids and hitting the road for like 3 days.
Wow.
That would be fun. Which for mothers of small children is like a really, 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 really big deal. Yeah. So we're gonna be in Tulsa, and so Jennifer, we're gonna meet up with Jennifer and kind of shop around.
It'll be fun. We'll have lots of good content for you.
Good. Yes, please share for us that won't be there with you.
You can fly down.
Oh my God, I would.
Pay like $1,500 for a ticket bought today for tomorrow.
Spirit Airline. You can Spirit Airline it.
Oh, true. You might not end up in Tulsa, but you can Spirit Airline it.
Oh, all right, ladies. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.